Good afternoon. I'm Brianna Nadeau, Council Member for Ward 1 and Chairperson of the Council's Committee on Public Works and Operations. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, and this meeting is being held in the Council chambers at the John A. Wilson Building. The time is 2:06 p.m., and I'm calling to order this additional meeting of the committee. For the record, I'd like to note that we have a quorum consisting of at-large Councilmember Robert White, Ward 4 Councilmember Janice Lewis-George, Ward 7 Council Wendell Felder, and myself. Today, the committee will consider and vote on its report and recommendations on the fiscal year 2026 budget for agencies under its purview. And for a quick note about the procedures of today's additional meeting, after my remarks, I'll move the report and their proposed recommendations on the Budget Support Act and block. All members will have an opportunity, if they so choose, to provide remarks before we vote. The Committee on Public Works and Operations sometimes refers to itself as the nitty-gritty city committee in recognition of the committee's attention to some of the most mundane and daily necessities of city life. We dive into the weeds, learn the difference between this kind of street sweeper and that one, how daily staffing assignments are made at DPW, and the legal steps someone takes if they have a discrimination complaint before the Office of Human Rights. By collaborating with the agencies under our purview to improve their work, agency and council leadership can and do improve government services. This report of the committee is the result of months of hearings, testimony, meetings, performance, and data analysis, as well as other forms of public engagement. The committee has been able to apply found savings within agencies the committee oversees, as well as transfer funds to other committees to restore unacceptable cuts in the budget that was presented to the council. Within the committee, funds were applied to keeping our city clean and enhancing cleanliness with additional waste collection, improving trash collection at parks, preserving and expanding the availability of public restrooms across the district, street cleaning and graffiti removal, expanding curbside composting, and neighborhood food waste collection bins. The mayor's proposed budget made some curious enhancements to DPW. One of those, about $4 million, was advertised as a one-year continuation of term positions for more intensive cleaning of corridors and highways. This is well-intentioned, but it was concerning to us that the executive could barely provide even the most basic of details, like a list of the corridors included in the initiative. We're still not even clear on what the name of the initiative is, whether it's Clean Corridors, Consistently Clean City, or Spring Cleaning. Adequate cleaning of our high-traffic corridors should not be an initiative. It should be a baseline expectation and part of the core functions of DPW. In lieu of those temporary positions, this committee turned that one-time funding into permanent enhancements to DPW staff, as well as funding to supplement our existing commercial corridors clean teams. The committee enhancements include 20 positions for corridor cleaning and enhancements to graffiti removal, nuisance abatement, and litter collections. The total number of positions is less than what the mayor proposed because we're choosing to fund higher salaries and permanent positions, even for entry-level jobs. The other major enhancement the mayor proposed at DPW is concerning on a more structural level. $9.3 million of funds from the Stormwater Permit Review Fund for DPW's signed sweeping program. While street sweeping is an allowable use for the special purpose revenue funds, this creates significant pressures on the district's key environmental programs and river cleanup priorities. This $9.3 million doesn't make much sense within DPW either. It's curiously budgeted as one-time funding and coded as IT maintenance. As we learned at our hearing, it's simply a holding pen for those dollars. What's proposed in the mayor's budget is to continue to roll that money into future years to fund full-time positions on a continuing one-time basis. In working with our budget office and the Transportation and Environment Committee, we learned that the special purpose account those funds came out of has an escrow requirement that we're now at risk of violating. This could mean losing out on federal funding in addition to the existing damage of this funding shift away from local environmental programs. We did not make this change in our committee, but before council finalizes the budget, it is almost certain that those funds will have to be removed from DPW and returned to that account. What all this means in practice is the mayor's budget has only funded the signed sweeping program for 1 year. The committee sees this as an opportunity for us to evaluate and improve the performance of our street sweeping program. The blocks that receive weekly sweeping are scattered and not based on performance data since they're by petition process. As we learned in our research, every year DC spends $2,500 for every mile of streets swept. I'll remind my colleagues that we're spending that much and still see a need for enhancements to clean major corridors. In light of those concerns, this budget funds one new program analyst position with the intent for increased capacity to support a more holistic evaluation of our science sweeping activities. Elsewhere in DPW, the committee report addresses traffic safety by funding my legislation to give DPW the authority to immediately boot and tow vehicles with fake or missing tags and to implement a new vehicle point system to prioritize booting and towing resources towards the most dangerous offenses. I want to thank Councilmember Allen and his team for the continued collaboration on this effort, which started all the way back when these bills were originally drafted. Here are some additional highlights from the committee's FY26 budget recommendations, organized into 4 themes. First, the committee makes significant investments in keeping our city clean and livable. We fund more than 250 new public litter and recycling cans, expand curbside compost pickup from 9,000 to 12,000 households, and fund additional 10 neighborhood smart bins for 24-hour food waste drop-off. And this is a big one. The committee funds the consolidation of park litter and recycling cans at DPW rather than the current inefficient system in which DPW and the Department of General Services share responsibility. We make additional investments in illegal dumping enforcement and improved staffing for better litter, trash, and recycling collections. The committee report recommends measures in the budget that will improve public safety, including road safety. And in this category, we provide support to people living with substance use disorder and create safe and vibrant public spaces by maintaining and enhancing the Ward 1 Community Navigators Program. We approve funds for security camera replacement and maintenance across the district and fully fund the expansion of Department for Hire Vehicles authority to cover food and parcel delivery apps. The committee report also makes recommendations that use public funds efficiently and effectively. And in this category, we fund new administrative law judges and staff at the Office of Administrative Hearings, enhancements that are critical to making every other part of DC government run efficiently and effectively. The committee similarly funds staffing and technology needs at the Contract Appeals Board and approves funding to support the PASS modernization project to streamline the district's online procurement system. The committee report restores funds to support the rights, health, and well-being of residents. And in this category, we undo a significant rollback of reforms and threats to TANF by transferring $6.4 million to the Committee on Human Services. The rollbacks in the budget presented to the council by the mayor would have turned the program back to the draconian policies of the 1990s that were proven to be ineffective and condemned by a DHS-convened working group. We fund home visiting for expectant parents, a program that was cut even though it exists in law, via transfer to the Committee on Health. We accept a transfer of money from the Committee on Health to fund the Farmers Market Support Amendment Act of 2025, partially restore funding to the Office of the Ombudsman for Children. We approve funding in the Office of Human Rights to implement the Second Chance Amendment Act, and we fully fund the Fairness and Human Rights Administrative Amendment Act that Council passed last year. With that, I want to turn to the Budget Support Act subtitles proposed by the mayor, as well as new subtitles proposed by the committee. The BSA presented to the council in conjunction with the budget itself is supposed to contain needed changes to legislation to make the budget possible. By law and by practice, it's not intended to be a repository for policy changes that are unrelated to the budget. This committee recommends removing many of these policy changes, insisting they're going through the regular legislative process so they can receive the attention they deserve from the council and the public. The committee recommends approval of 3 of the mayor's proposed subtitles without much change: the Community Affairs Amendment Act, the Surplus Property Sales Fund Amendment Act, and the Technology Ecosystem Support Amendment Act. The committee also recommends approval of the Vending Compliance and Modernization Amendment Act with changes. The subtitle as proposed would make sweeping changes to street and sidewalk vending laws in the district, including adding new penalties for vending violations. The committee believes that such substantive changes should go through the full legislative process, including a public hearing. Therefore, the committee has made several changes to remove most of this language, but keeps key provisions that support implementation of the current law. The committee did not have the funds to replace the estimated savings to strike the proposed subtitle on limitations on liability against the District of Columbia Act of 2025. The subtitle creates new requirements for accidents involving the district that result in property damage, injuries, and death, including setting caps for maximum allowed monetary damage. It's important that individuals who are harmed as a result of actions of the district can receive adequate payments for their damages. Any type of cap on these payments jeopardizes an individual's ability to obtain justice. Finally, a moment to discuss the Mayor's Project Labor Agreement Amendment Act of 2025. District law currently requires the use of a project labor agreement for any capital construction project with a cost of $75 million or greater. Due to the recently passed revised project labor agreement cost threshold amendment act of 2024 for projects first included in the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 26 through 2032, the new threshold for a PLA was set to be $50 million. The mayor's proposed subtitle increases the PLA threshold to $100 million for all projects. It also delays the applicability of PLA requirements for all projects to those first included in the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2032 or later, including one that has already been agreed upon. In other words, it means that PLAs will be required for far fewer projects to the detriment of good jobs and workers. Although the committee would otherwise recommend striking the subtitle from the BSA, it's unable to do so due to the projected cost of its removal. The committee recommends approval with the intent of working with the committee of the whole to lessen the damage of the mayor's subtitle. The committee's proposed new subtitles largely address technical corrections and funding of new legislation. There's only one I'd like to highlight: the Public Restrooms Program Amendment Act of 2025. Along with funding allocated by the committee, this subtitle realizes the decade-long goal of having a real public restroom program throughout the city. The committee's budget restores funding for the 6 existing standalone public restrooms and accepts funds from other committees to install 4 additional throne units at Ellington Plaza in Ward 1, Watkins Recreation Center in Ward 6, Starburst Plaza in Ward 5, and Marvin Gaye Park in Ward 7. The committee funds a new program manager at DPW to oversee and grow a permanent public restroom program. After initial failures to implement public restroom programs at DGS, 2 years ago, the council created a new pilot program at DPW. That pilot has exceeded expectations, with a survey showing 90% approval rating, which is very unusual for a government program, I might add. Hold on a second. I've lost my place with my witty remark. Here we go. The committee has also received requests for throne restrooms in additional locations, and in order to ensure the continued access to public restroom facilities across the district, the committee seeks to make this program permanent. The committee therefore recommends approval of the subtitle. Even in a difficult budget year, district residents deserve a budget that invests in them, all of them, including our most vulnerable residents and our hardest working government employees. The budget must address the need for childcare, early childhood educator pay, affordable housing, social services, protections for residents, quality services, and all the things that support and power our city. The Committee on Public Works plays a critical role in overseeing many of the city agencies and functions that residents count on daily. And with this budget report, we recommend restoring many vital services and protections that were removed from the budget that was presented to us. With that, I move in block the report on the committee's recommendations on the fiscal year 26 proposed budget and the committee's recommendations on the fiscal year 26 Budget Support Act of 2025, with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Are there any comments or questions? Janice, then Robert. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. It's been an honor serving on this committee. I know this has been a tough budget year, but I want to thank you and your staff for the substantial work you've put into this proposal and for making some critical investments that will benefit residents across the district. I want to thank you for accepting the transfers from the Facilities Committee that we made to the Public Works for $633,000 for consolidating park litter and recycling collection at DPW, and the $247,000 and some change for 2 sweep inspectors, including 1 supervisor position. I think for too long, we've had an inefficient and confusing system where DGS, under the Facilities Committee, and DPW, within your committee, split responsibility for park waste collection, with DPW collecting litter cans when capacity allowed and DGS handling recycling. This lack of coordination meant some park litter cans weren't collected on any regular schedule, forcing residents to submit 311 requests just to get a trash can emptied. Even more frustrating, identical looking bins sitting right next to each other were being serviced by two completely different agencies. Through our committee's oversight work, we've identified this gap and partnered with Public Works to transfer the resources needed to fix it. These transfers will give DPW the 9 new positions needed to properly inventory and service all park waste collection. This also marks the first time DPW will handle public recycling collection, creating a foundation for more consistent citywide services across the board. I also want to acknowledge the 100,000 transfer to facilities for the Walter Pierce Park restroom in Adams Morgan. Beyond these transfers between our committees, your committee made some important investments that I think it's important for highlighting. The 1.3 million transfer to restore TANF funding prevents harmful cuts to cash assistance for our most vulnerable families. The 750,000 for community navigators addressing substance abuse disorders continues critical services in Ward 1, which we see as we border Ward 1 and Ward 4 border. I'm pleased to see investments in expanding access to healthy food, supporting expectant parents through home visiting programs, and restoring the 500,000 for the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children, which you, Councilor Doe, led that effort, and I continue that effort. And I'm glad to see that we are continuing to support the Office for Ombudsman for Children in their critical oversight work for our most vulnerable children and their families. I'm also supportive of the committee's investment in expanding public restrooms to 10 facilities, adding 20 new sanitation positions, and growing composting services to 12,000 households. These are concrete improvements that will benefit residents citywide. I'm hoping with this new expansion of composting services that I will be in the next lottery after my several attempts to be selected for composting services. With that, I would like to thank you for this thoughtful work, the members of the staff, as well as obviously our amazing budget office of general counsel, and our amazing secretary's office, as well as the members of the Department of Public Works who do the real work to keep this district clean. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau, for the exceptional work that you and your team have done in leading this committee. I also will be trying to get one of those new composting spots. And as a user of Walter Pierce Park, we'll be happy to have a working restroom there. So thank you for that work. I also want to congratulate you on funding the Fairness and Human Rights Administration bill to help get people compensation for civil rights violations. I introduced a version of this bill in 2022, and I was glad when you introduced and moved an updated version last year. Among other things, it lets victims of discrimination move their case to court after the Office of Human Rights initial findings are complete, rather than limiting their case to the Commission on Human Rights. I want to thank you for continuing to secure public restroom facilities around the district. They do make a difference to people just trying to move through the city, and especially for people experiencing homelessness, people with kids, and just frankly, as a world-class city, we should have restrooms throughout the city that people can use. Now, we worked together for years on funding your public restroom working group and construction bill, and it was frustrating that the mayor's administration didn't follow through on your very careful planning work, but you've continued to be steadfast here, and I'm grateful for that. I'm also glad that you found a workaround with Throne and are continuing to lead the charge there. Finally, thank you for your commentary on the value of project labor agreements. I understand that finding $76 million to cover the CFO's PLA cost saving, the projections over the capital plan was out of the question, but it's also a reminder to me of how crazy our budgeting process is, that the mayor can make policy decisions that limit the body that should have the power of the purse and the power of policy decisions. So that doesn't sit right with me, but that's something I have to work through with colleagues. But I want to underscore the committee's recommendation to restore some PLA requirements when the budget is before the full council. When we recover economically, we want to make sure the people who recover with us aren't just the people who already had money going into this. So I appreciate the work that you and your team have done, and look forward to voting in favor of these budget recommendations.
I'll be brief. First and foremost, committee woman, just want to thank you and members of your team for the yeoman's job that you all have put into this committee report. When you think about the district being a world-class city, it could not be a world-class city having dirty streets and litter everywhere. So I appreciate the work that this committee has done to really put our money where our mouths are by ensuring that our city is clean. I love to see the investments that you provided specifically as it relates to funding more than 250 new public litter and recreation cans across the district, as well as the support to fund existing clean teams. And I'm excited that Ward 7 is getting its very first thrown restroom. So I appreciate your investment in that. And I look forward to working with you throughout the remainder of this process.
Very good. We have a tradition when we install a new throne, we cut the toilet paper ribbon. So we'll be by. Thank you, everybody, for your remarks. It's been great working with everybody and all of your teams. So thank you for your collaboration. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And with that, I want to thank all of our agency directors and my colleagues on the committee for your tireless work during this oversight process. And I especially want to thank the district residents and stakeholders who joined us online or in person, emailed written testimony, left voicemails, and scheduled meetings to make sure the committee was well informed when making recommendations for this budget. Your experiences and insights help shape these recommendations. I want to thank all of our colleagues in the CFO's office and in the executive branch for taking on the very daunting challenge of preparing multiple budgets, all with the additional complication of less favorable revenue estimates, forcing late-hour adjustments, all under a truncated timeline due to receiving the budget nearly 2 months late. Although I may not agree with every choice made, I appreciate the hard work and commitment to the agencies under this committee's purview responsible for executing many of the district's most essential services. I want to take a moment to thank my own committee staff for their work in preparing these recommendations. Sabrine Kadi, Senior Legislative Assistant, Abby Boschert, Legislative Assistant, Amanda Chulik, Legislative Analyst, David Meny, Legislative Director and Deputy Chief of Staff, and Ariel Ardura, Committee Director. Also, a special thank you to the committee's General Counsel, Valerie Nadal, to all the great people at OSEC and in cable television for ensuring we're able to keep all of our hearings accessible to the public, and the Council's Budget Office, including Joe Wolf, Ann Phelps, Jen Budoff, Avril Caraway, and especially, once again, to our amazing budget analyst, Sam Hodges. My team and I are incredibly grateful to you for all your support and guidance throughout this process. Finally, I want to thank my personal office staff who took time to help get our committee report across the finish line, and without whom this committee and I would not be able to do the work we do on behalf of district residents. If there is no further business before the committee, the time is 2:27 p.m. and this additional meeting of the Committee on Public Works and Operations is adjourned.